Cook on the play here, that's huge for him because obviously the AMP player wants to be on the play. Games 1 and 3 potentially if they goes that far. Dylan's not going to really be able to get any spell pierces online because usually the Rug Delver deck needs to make a play on turn 1 in order to have a chance. Ideally a Delver sequence.
It's a ponder here for Cook. Now last match he was able to kill Todd Anderson on on turn 2 game 1, and then on turn 2 game 2. Jeez. Okay then.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean the deck's that good sometimes.
Yeah. Game 2, Todd may have made a slight hiccup. Did see on Twitter he was a little bit frustrated with himself how he played that game, but Cook was able to take advantage of that mistake, move forward, actually win the match. So we'll see if he can move forward and win this one as he is going to shuffle with the ponder.
This deck, one of the few decks that shuffles a lot with ponder. You know, a lot of the other decks usually there's so many powerful cards in their deck they don't have to.
Just looking for like one card with ponder, I think. In this deck, Donegan's going to draw a card. He does have a Daze, a Forcible in his hand. He actually did just draw a Delver of Secrets for the turn. May have been the best draw he could have found, so that card's going to come directly into play. That'll provide the clock. That's what he's looking for. As here's a Gataxian Probe from Cook.
Yeah, this deck is night and day different when it has a turn 1 Delver.
Donegan's going to reveal 2 Stifle, a Spell Pierce, a Daze, a Forcible, and a Tarmogoyf. So a pretty good hand. We'll see if Cook has any discard. Again, he does play Therapy and Duress.
Yeah, really good hand here. 2 permission spells. And he has the Spell Pierce as well if he's able to untap. So
Duress will be dazed, and Cook will pass the turn back.
Dylan's got to be happy with that. Delver does not flip.
Going to play Flooded Strand, attack here for 1. Cook's going to go down to 16. Simply pass the turn back. We'll draw a card. Looks to be an Infernal Tutor.
Yeah, without mana, it's really hard for him to navigate. Dylan's just got really obnoxious permission spells right now. It looks like the Delver Seekers isn't going to flip either, but he is going to sacrifice the Flooded Strand prior to drawing the card. Obviously, he doesn't want to draw it. Could be a Tarmogoyf, could be a Lightning Bolt or something like that. Not very relevant.
Pretty strange. I believe he has 3 copies of Burning Wish in his hand right now. That's not where he wants to be at all.
Yeah, very clunky hand, particularly if you don't have mana. I mean, I think he'd be okay with that hand if he was able to just make his mana drops.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're able to Burning Wish for like a Duress or something like that, or Thoughtseize, I think you're okay. But yeah, really no mana to work with here. And Dylan's just adding more pressure to the board right now.
Yeah, there's a Rite of Flame. That one's not going to help. He's got to discard one of those copies of Burning Wish. Going to pass the turn back. Delver does not flip again. Here's a Flooded Strand. Tarmogoyf and Delver are going to come in. The Tarmogoyf right now is just, it's actually a little bit bigger than we thought. Going to get that all configured. Looks to be a 3/4. Sorcery, a land, and an instant and Daze in the graveyard. Cook's going to go down to 11. Draws another copy of Rite of Flame. That's not what he's looking for. This is probably the reason that he shuffled with Ponder.
Yeah.
Said he was looking for a land. Gataxian Probe didn't find it either, as Donegan is going to sacrifice this Flooded Strand here.
Yeah, and if he was able to get a red source earlier, his hand's actually pretty good. You know, Burning Wish allows him to try to find some discard to kind of get through that Force of Will and the Spell Pierce, and at least bait some of the counter spells. So unfortunately for Bryant here, just really nothing to work with.
There's a Wasteland. Going to kill that. Now Bryant has no permanence. He's going to draw a card. It's a copy of Gemstone. Mine, that's probably a little too late. We'll see.
I mean, yeah, he could just try to go for it. Obviously, he knows good chance it's not going to happen, but
I think he might be able to take him one more hit, maybe. Even if the Delver flips.
If the Delver flips, he can take one more hit because he's at 7 currently. And if Dylan doesn't have a Lightning Bolt, he should be able to survive one more turn at least. But even if he does survive one more turn, you're not really sure what he can do here.
Well, he's going to start to try to go off. Here's a Rite of Flame. That's a hard cast Daze with a mana floating, so that's gone. Pass the turn back. Donegan going to check here. Finally does hit. That's a Force of Will.
Yeah.
And Brian says, I'm good.
All right, I'm going to take 6 and you reveal the Force of Will. I get it.
Dylan Donegan going to win game number 1 here over Brian Cook. Rug Delver up a game over Ad Nauseam and Tendrils as we do turn our attention to the sideboard. You've got Cooks in front of you. There's a lot of Burning Wish targets in there.
Yeah, he's got, Tendrils, Massacre, Past in Flames, Empty the Warrens, Grape Shot, Infernal Tutor, Thoughtseize. All cards that he can kind of get with Burning Wish. He does have 3 copies of Abrupt Decay and 3 copies of Xanthic Swarm. I expect him to probably bring in the Xanthic Swarm in this matchup. This is a tough spot for Dylan because he doesn't really want to leave in Lightning Bolt in this matchup. It's not terrible because you can always go to the face, but at the same time, you kind of really just want permission and creatures. So Xanthic Swarm could actually be really good if you can get it early on. It allows him to basically ignore all of Rug Delver's permission spells. So Xanthic Swarm I definitely see coming in. Doesn't really need the Abrupt Decays. Probably going to bring in the one Tropical Island he has in the sideboard to help cast that Xanthic Swarm. But beyond that, Burning Wish decks, you don't really board in a lot of these cards. That's kind of the convenient thing about a Burning or any type of Wish deck is that sideboarding is usually pretty easy for you.
Yeah. Take a look over here. We'll see 2 copies from a Lava Mancer. There's a Forked Bolt, a Dismember, 2 Submerge, 1 Pyroblast, 1 Red Elemental Blast, an Ancient Grudge, a Destructive Revelry, a Vendilion Click, that's a big one. Sylvan Library, additional copy of Spell Pierce and Flusterstorm, those are also huge. And then a Grafdigger's Cage. I expect to see the Click, the Flusterstorm, and the Pierce come in. Wouldn't be surprised to actually see Sylvan Library come in as well as a little bit of helper to actually make sure you can help find your good cards. Pyroblast and Elemental Blast aren't really great in this matchup. It doesn't have enough blue spells, I don't think, and the important spells aren't blue either. You could make an argument because he has enough bad cards in his deck that he can sideboard that in, but I'm not even sure he has enough bad cards in his deck. Lightning Bolts can go, and the Forked Bolt can go. That's 5. I think he wants everything else, though.
Yeah, all of his permission spells he obviously wants. He can't afford to cut any of his creatures because, like we said, he really needs some pressure backed with permission in order to win. So, yeah, really just 5 cards that I can see not really wanting in this particular matchup. Even Stifle obviously can turn off Tendrils. So really only 5 cards. And again, he's not boarding in that much. He's boarding in like a few more permission spells, maybe a Grafdigger's Cage. So his deck is pretty well suited game 1 for combo decks.
Yeah. This is the kind of deck that Rug Delver does pretty well against. Now, there are some players out there that find this matchup to be pretty good for Ant, or at least better than people think it is. Carson Cotter and I have had that conversation before. I think that the Bug Delver matchup is actually pretty tough for Ant, but Rug Delver can be tough depending on the build and the player. But, Cook's draw that game just fell apart. He just didn't get going at all.
Yeah, so he just got nothing going.
Yeah.
And Dylan is a competent Rug Delver player. We saw him navigate a match earlier today very well. So I think it comes down to, if both players are very competent with the deck, I think Rug Delver is probably favored. If the Ant player is even a little bit better than the Rug Delver player, I think the Ant player can usually figure out a way to win.
Yeah, that's how it feels too. Obviously he's going to need lands to be able to function. As Donegan's going to send his hand back, maybe looking for a Force of Will on the draw, but that was a pretty quick mulligan there for Dylan.
Yeah, so Bryant's happy with his opening 7. Hopefully it's a little bit better than the last one. I think his last hand, he kept on 7. I don't think I can fault him because he had a lot of really powerful spells. 1 land, but he had a Ponder, and plus he's on the play, so I think it's a reasonable keep there. Turn 1 Ponder, you expect to kind of hit a land. He doesn't have that many lands in his deck, but still, I think it's a reasonable keep. I think he had a Lion's Eye Diamond as well. So,
yeah, he did.
Probably was thinking potentially could have gone off on turn 2 maybe with a little help, so just unfortunately he was never able to get a second land early enough.
I wouldn't be surprised if the hand that he kept was, a 1 land of Ponder, Lion's Eye Diamond, as we did mention, and then, the Ponder ended up cantripping into a Burning Wish, the mystery card. His draw for the turn was Gitaxian Probe, and then that turned into a Burning Wish.
Yeah, because he had to shuffle. He couldn't. He ended up looking at the top 3 and then reshuffling his deck. So, yeah, probably just got clogged with Burning Wishes and not enough mana to do anything with him.
So I can't imagine he kept a Burning Wish heavy hand. He does need 1, of course, to win the game with because his Tendrils is in his sideboard, but I would be a little bit surprised if that was. I wouldn't be surprised, if that's what happened.
Yeah.
He's going to search up a tropical island here with the Misty Rainforest. Again, green cards in the sideboard, Abrupt Decay, and Xantid Swarm. And that is a Xantid Swarm.
That is what he's going to attempt to cast. Does Dylan have the Force of Will? Obviously, he wants to, but he does not. But it looks like he does have a Lightning Bolt, thankfully. So we'll be able to deal with that Xantid Swarm.
I was curious if he was going to leave that in. 4 bolts and 4 lightning bolts and a Forked Bolt. Burns not the best in this matchup. They're basically just lava spikes. It does typically cut the clock by a turn, but it does give you an out to Xantid Swarm, and that's exactly what we're going to use to take that thing off the table.
And again, Dylan knows this deck really well. Maybe he tested this matchup, and he knows that Xanthic Swarm is a card that they're going to be bringing in. Obviously, a lot of Ant players do have Xanthic Swarm on their sideboard. You can't afford to lose to that card, so maybe just a concession to the Swarm.
Bryant going to go down to 18 now, sacrificing the Scalding Tarn. We'll see what land he does want to search up. Don't forget that he does have other sources of green mana with Gemstone Mine, but the Tropical Island is from his sideboard, so if that does get wastelanded, it does become a little bit problematic to be able to cast the green spells that he boards in.
Yeah, really only with the Gemstone Mine Lotus Petals left. And again, it's another problem here is that maybe he needs the red mana as well. You know, he needs black mana, he needs blue mana, he needs red mana. Green mana really is only for that sideboarded card, so potentially could get a little color screwed here, but
Cook did just sacrifice that Scalding Tarn to get an Underground Sea, make sure he doesn't get stifled. There's the hand, Gemstone Mine, a Dark Ritual, Burning Wish, another Dark Ritual, and then a Chrome Mox. Donegan going to write those cards down via Gataxian Probe. Probe, right against the Storm deck. You know exactly how much time you do have.
yeah. So Bryant maybe thinking about going for a turn 3 Burning Wish for Empty of the Warrens and try to just cast an empty for 10 there. Not sure he can do that now, especially if he lost his Black Source.
Here's an end of turn Brainstorm.
Dylan does have the counter spells that he needs to fight that. Still doesn't have a threat, but it looks like he might get a Nimble Mongoose into play next turn.
Yeah, that was one of the cards drawn. The other two were a Volcanic Island and a Flooded Strand. So he does have lands now. And he's going to figure out how he wants to set his deck.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he puts the Volcanic Island back and the Flooded Strand and draws the Flooded Strand.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get one of these cards no matter what for his draw step since this is end of turn. So I think the big question is, all right, what's the card that I want to let go? I think Volcanic Island letting that go is probably okay. I'm not sure if you need 3 lands.
Yeah. This deck can function pretty smoothly on 2 lands, and that's exactly what it looks like is going to happen here. Volcanic Island is going to get shuffled away. He's going to find a Tropical Island, which will allow him to cast the Nimble Mongoose. And he does have a Tarmogoyf as well, but I think he wants to just keep Spell Pierce mana up, which means that since he has a 3rd mana, he can actually cast Tarmogoyf next turn and again keep Spell Pierce mana up. But I think maybe that's what he's thinking, and that's exactly what happens. He thought about maybe casting that Goyf there for a second, but no real reason to.
There's Gemstone Mine. Going to pass the turn back yet again. Will Cook. Again, Cook's not underneath a significant amount of pressure. The pressure is Donegan drawing a lot of permission spells.
Yeah.
But his life total is fine. It's just another Brainstorm. He's going to find a Forcible, Tarmogoyf, and a Ponder. So there's the real opportunity here for Donegan to sculpt the perfect hand that Cook can't work his way through. But his life total is pretty high, even though Mongoose, now there are 7 cards in the graveyard. So there's a Flooded Strand to make it 8. And now here's an attack for 3. So Cook's going to go down to 15.
Yeah, so Dylan put both Goyfs on top of his library, and he can draw one of them. He can shuffle the other one away if he doesn't want to draw it. I don't think he needs to really draw the other Goyf because this alone is enough of a clock to kill Bryant in 2 turns. So wouldn't be surprised if Dylan just shuffled away that second Goyf to try to draw maybe like another Spell Pierce or a Daze or something like that.
Cook goes down to 12 here. Tarmogoyf is a 4/5, so all of a sudden, the clock is out there, looking at basically a 2-turn clock at this point. So Cook's got to get moving. See if he can find a way to get moving. It's Dark Ritual. See if Donegan wants to attempt to counter this. Typically, you counter the first acceleration spell. That's a good, really good place to start.
And Bryant does have almost perfect information. I mean, he knows about the 1 Forcible. He knows about the Spell Pierce, I believe, from that Gataxian Probe. Or no, maybe that was last game. So yeah, no, I don't think he knows exactly what Dylan's playing with right here.
Second Dark Rit. That's a Burning Wish.
This you likely have to counter.
I imagine that's the case.
You can't let Empty the Warrens resolve, especially if you don't have a Flusterstorm or a Stifle. So I believe he has 4 black mana left after this. So Ritual's 5, and then tapping a red source, using 2 of that. So you have 4 mana left. Bryant can play around the Spell Pierce. So Dylan's going to have to force this Burning Wish.
It's actually kind of interesting. I don't know how many blue cards Donegan has in his hand right now. We know he has 2 Forcibles and a Spell Pierce. I'm not sure if he has another blue card for the other Forcible. I think that's why he's giving this such a long thought. Or, I mean, he could just be posturing. And it does look like, it does look like he has multiple, Yeah,
Ponder and Spell Pierce, it looks like. So he can double Forcible this turn if he needs to. Looks like he pitched a Ponder, so he still has Spell Pierce Forcible in his hand.
Again, 4 black mana floating, as you mentioned. Gonna try to cast Burning Wish again is Cook, so here's this. Down to 3 black mana now. Now Donegan is gonna think, and he's gonna let that go, I think.
Wow. And here, the interesting thing here is Bryant doesn't have any red mana left. So if he goes for Empty the Warren, I don't believe he can actually cast it. If Empty the Warren's resolved, obviously it's huge, but he can't actually cast it. So he's just gonna go for, looks like he's gonna go for Tendrils, but I don't know if it's enough spells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it would be Tundras for 12.
So 2 Dark Rituals, Burning Wish, and then the Force of Will.
Yeah, so overall it'd be, I think the Tendrils would be the 6th spell cast.
How about a Chrome Mox?
There's a 7th spell. So currently 6 spells on the stack.
How about a Lotus Petal?
All right.
That's 7 spells.
Yeah, so even if he Force of Wills one of the Tendrils, that's
gross.
it.
That's pretty gross.
Wow.
8 times 2 is 16. Force one of those. Take 1. 7 of them resolve. That's 14. Forcing it is 15. And I actually think that Dylan has Force Will plus blue card in his hand.
He just did not counter that Burning Wish.
Yeah, and overthought himself.
Yeah, well, way overthought it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see he's looking at those 2 blue cards. He's going to concede the game. So Bryant Cook is going to win this game over Dylan Donegan, and we are headed to a 3rd and final game. And you can see some frustration there.
That's unfortunate. Dylan just overthought it. You have 2 Force of Wills. Not sure what he was thinking about there. Maybe he thought that Bryant had the 1 Tendrils of Agony in his hand. But again, for that, and he didn't want to fuel the storm count again.
That's possible.
You know?
That's what that is, I think, unfamiliarity with maybe the matchup and playing against a Burning Wish version of the deck. Also, I mean, if you follow Bryant and his Storm builds, this is a build where his win condition's in the sideboard. He doesn't have a Tendrils main. He's got an empty main, and he can only find the Tendrils via Burning Wish, so you actually have to counter Burning Wish. I think what's actually a really heads-up play there by Bryant is just the ability to actually get Dylan to, work towards the spell count a little bit, because I think if the first Burning Wish resolves, he may not die. I mean, it's tough to say how things would have went, but what we do know, obviously, because we're working with great information, is that if Dylan Force of Wills that second Burning Wish, the game is over.
Yeah.
That's what we know. And he did not pull the trigger on that, and that's why we're going to head to a 3rd one here. And if you're Cook, you got away with one.
Yeah, you got away with the one, and this is one of those situations where if Dylan had perfect information and knew exactly what Brian's main deck was, he probably just counters it. Because he didn't naturally draw Tendrils. Yeah. If he has empty, you can't really stop that anyway, but he doesn't have the red mana anyway, so wow, it's a pretty surprising turn of events there, because things look pretty bad for Bryant. Beginning of that turn, just looking double Force of Will. He's got a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, I did not think Bryant was going to win that game.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of the cool thing about Ant. These Ant players that really know their decks inside and out, they can pull out these games out of nowhere. And we saw the same thing. I think BBD was on camera one of these open series. He was playing Tendrils against Miracles, and it looked impossible.
Yeah,
it looked impossible for him to win. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the opponent makes one mistake. And suddenly he was able to win, and that's the kind of the power of these combo decks, is that you're so hyper aggressive that if you make one mistake against them, then suddenly you just lose the game, and it's very hard to play perfectly against them, because there's just so many. They put you in a position where you're forced to make so many decisions. Even if you have a handful of counter spells, knowing what's the right one to counter is incredibly important. So that's where testing comes into play. Dylan obviously is familiar with this matchup, but probably not as familiar with Brian's deck, and I think that's kind of what hurt him there.
Well, game 3 will be underway here in just a moment.
Dylan's going to be on the play this time, so he's at least has that to look forward to. And they're both players are going to keep here. Oh no,
Brian's going
to mulligan. Wow. So Brian is going to have his work cut out for here. You don't want to be on the draw playing Ant against Rug Delver, and especially you don't want to go to 6 here. So let's see if Dylan's able to bounce back. One of the things that happens if you make a mistake, sometimes people, it affects them in the other games, and they can't kind of control their emotions. Sometimes they make the mistakes start to compound, and all of a sudden you kind of throw away a game. You go in tilt, so to speak. So let's see if Dylan can rebound from that, slight error in judgment.
I mean, he was definitely frustrated after game 2.
Yeah, he looked a little frustrated.
Yeah.
But whatever. If you make a mistake, that's fine. You're playing for a top 8 right here. Obviously, it looks like he's still angry about it.
I mean, you understand why.
Oh yeah, I totally understand why. But you just got to focus now. You can't let that get to you.
Yeah, no. Okay, that's that. I was gonna say, if he has nothing to do on turn 1, this might not be good. But this feels like a stifle to me now. So
that'd be great. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, Dylan's kept that 7-card hand, so you know it's either a Brainstorm or a Stifle. He's not going to have a hand with nothing.
Yeah, that's a Stifle.
And
he could have played a Delver on turn
He
one.
did have the
chose not
Delver,
to.
yeah. So very smart play there. Heads up play for Dylan. He's got the Wasteland, and now we're going to see a Delver now. So really interesting start here from Dylan. He's able to Wasteland Bryant, and Bryant doesn't have a second land. Wow. And Dylan reveals a Force of Will to flip Delver into Insectile Aberration. So great start here for Dylan. He even has the Wasteland, and Bryant doesn't have any basics in his land, in his deck. So if Bryant does play a land, it won't be long for this world.
Pretty insane too, because the way that Dylan kind of won game one was just with the mana screw strategy. Like Brian just didn't really draw anything, and Brian's deck doesn't have a lot of lands in it. Now there's a Lotus Petal. That's a temporary mana. He's going to discard Brainstorm, pass the turn back. Donegan's going to draw Flood Strand, attack here for 3.
Yeah, Donegan's not messing around. He's like, I know I messed up, but I'm not losing this game. I don't care.
Yeah. There's Tropical Island.
I'm not only going to win, I'm going to win quickly.
It's always interesting to watch how players bounce back in situations like that where, Dylan, by all accounts, probably just lost that game on his own, just overthought himself.
You could tell he's playing a lot more confidently now. He's like, no, I know I messed up. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to win.
His hand's great.
His hand's great. Feeling good.
Yeah.
Opponent's discarding.
Tarmogoyf right now sitting in a 3-4. Donegan's going to draw a card. Looks like there's another copy of Wasteland, I believe. He'll put that into play. Attack for 6. Cook's going to go down to 4. Cook will draw a card. Again, we know he has a Lotus Petal. He's going to extend the hand. That's a one-sided affair right there. Dylan Donegan's going to win this game and this match over Bryant Cook, and Rug Delver is moving on to the elimination routes. With any luck for Dylan, he will be moving to the #1 seed, and that's back-to-back top 8s for him.
He basically won this round 3-0.